Welcome back to the Betsperts Golf DFS Show here at none other than BetspertsGolf.com. As always, I'm your host, John Daigle. No Ron Klos today, who's down for the count with illness. No Byron Lindeque today, who is on vacation in Hawaii. He also took this week off, as we'll get to, like many golfers, ahead of the Honda Classic. So I reached into my bag of friends, and I invite someone who is not only friendly enough to take the time away from prospects as he's working on that behind the scenes for NFL, but also who dabbles in golf DFS and betting. And that is none other than good friend Jared Smola of Draft Sharks. Jared, how's it going?
It's good. Awesome to be on. Yeah, I'm a football guy who dabbles in golf in the off season, but I love it. And not that there's much crossover between the two sports, but I think handicapping them, I think there's some crossover, and you got to kind of know the correct stuff to look at. There's a lot of noise in both football and golf, and I think pinpointing the right stuff to look at is kind of the key to me, at least.
And DFS is still a board game for adults with lots of money on the line. So we are still just like NFL DFS, putting together a puzzle, trying to figure out the correct pieces, which don't fit, understanding what the field is doing, and thus the leverage needed off of it. So it's honestly somewhat the same game we're talking about, which is why I'm excited to hear your analysis on PGA DFS in general as we move along here.
Yeah, I mean, we know ownership matters in all DFS sports. I think it might be most important in golf just because it's such a volatile event from week to week. And this week, especially with a bad field at this course where you see a lot of carnage, it can be one bad shot that takes you out of a tournament. So to me, this week, especially, ownership is something I think you really want to key in on.
And we'll discuss that as we move along because, as we already hinted at, the Honda Classic this week at PGA National features only 8 of the top 50 players in the official world golf rankings, as many are just taking the week off to rest ahead of next week's Arnold Palmer Invitational. And so we do have a much weaker field than usual out this weekend. 26 actual water hazards across 15 different holes as well, including 8 holes that require approach shots to cross a water hazard. As Ron Klos noted in his course preview up on BetspertsGolf.com, over the past 5 years, the field here has averaged 2.4 double bogeys or worse per 72 holes, per 4 rounds, which ranks as the most on any course on tour. So this tells you the accuracy and precision needed, especially for long ball striking. The average approach shot here at the PGA National comes from 170 yards out. So making correct and precise contact with your long irons on approach shots is something we will definitely be looking into and building lineups. What else stands out to you, though, Jared, whenever you began building lineups? What metrics are you weighing for PGA National course?
Yeah, I mean, definitely fairways gained and greens in regulation, as you mentioned. Just keeping the ball on grass and out of the water is huge here. The big thing for me this week, though, is we're going from the West Coast, a lot of POA greens, to Florida, Bermuda greens, and you see certain guys with massive discrepancies in terms of how well they putt on POA versus how well they putt on Bermuda. So that's definitely something to look at. If a guy has putted poorly for the past month, I don't really care, because these greens are so much different than we've been on for the past month or two.
Especially when we get into the dumpster diving 6K range, I think it's another week where we have to sacrifice something when paying down for those guys. But given how weak the field is, I would imagine ownership may be spread out across the 7K, 6K range, because as we start at the top here, there are only 2 golfers on DraftKings priced in the 5 digits, and that is Sungjae Im and Shane Lowry. Right now, an educated guess would be both of them coming in anywhere from 25 to 30%, if not higher, given how weak the field is, given their outright projections, Lowry and Im in particular, over the rest of the field. And so I think everyone's going to start with at least one of them in their lineups. It is very tough to fit both, but you can do that if you're just ignoring the 9K range overall. What are your overall thoughts here at the top 2 golfers? Are these one of these 2? Are you willing to fade, or are you going all in as well at the top?
So to me, Sungjae is clearly the best player in this field. It's kind of a tier down even to Lowry to me. Sungjae is also best on Bermuda greens. He's won this tournament. He had awesome course history here until last year when he missed the cut, which is just kind of a reminder of how volatile this event could be. I don't like taking anyone at 25 to 30% ownership at this course, but if I'm taking one of these top guys, it's definitely Sungjae. I think if Lowry is going to be that level of ownership, he's going to be a fade for me because I think he belongs, closer to the mid 9, maybe high 9 range. I think Sungjae again is kind of the cream of the crop of this field.
It's also somewhat annoying that Lowry was low 8Ks last week, and he was a popular play despite poor recent performances because of his course history at Riviera, which is a very sticky course. We talked about it in the DFS show last week. But now we have Lowry moving up to 10Ks, not for anything he accomplished, but just because of the weakness of the field. And so that tells me it's not really a situation, honestly, where I'm interested in chasing him, especially because those past poor performances, maybe that's what reared their head all of a sudden at a completely different course than Riviera, especially in terms of accuracy off the tee. I don't mind starting with M, but also if that gets me to sacrifice, that forces my hand to sacrifice the 9K range, that's something I don't want to do when building because I love this 9K range. And I think there are a lot of different ranges to go. And so that's why, honestly, like if you ask me to pick one, yes, M would be my preferred favorite like you, but honestly, I'm willing to just fade 10K, the two guys all together and start builds elsewhere.
Yeah, in a different course, I'd be worried about fading Sungjae. But again, here, like if he makes 2 bad shots on Thursday, like he could be missing the cut. So just because of the ownership, I think he's a fine fade.
And unfortunately, his outright market, it's so heavily priced that it's not even worth betting on that either. Somewhere else, though, I went and looked in the outright market as we start in the 9Ks. I definitely don't mind starting lineups if I'm skipping M and Lowry with Chris Kirk. I want to say Christian Kirk as we have you on, but no, with Chris Kirk as he leads this entire field, and total strokes gained over the last month. So if I jump on a 9-9 guy, especially given how we expect ownership to shake out for Billy Horschel right underneath him, then Chris Kirk is definitely somewhere I don't mind starting. I know both Ryan Noonan and Ron had Aaron Wise at 9,200 also written up in their outright bet articles. But do you have a gauge right now on Aaron Wise's ownership? Because I think there are pivot options if we think he becomes in heavily rostered. I just really don't have a good guess right now on Wednesday afternoon.
Either do I. And I bet Aaron Wise at 28-1. Like, long term, I call him the third best player in this field behind Sungjae and Lowry. Now, Wise's current form is not very good. It's funny. He used to be such a good ball striker and a horrible putter. He's actually figured out how to putt, it looks like, but the ball striking hasn't been that great over the last month or two. He does have a pretty good course history here. He's generally good on coastal courses. In the outright betting market, I'm willing to just take the shot that he, I think if he brings his A game, again, he has a good chance to win this tournament. In DFS, because of the poor recent form, if he's going to be, 15, 20% owned, which I think is possible, I think he's a good fade.
Interesting. And if you do fade him, I will say I will be overweight on Matt Kuchar, whether that be a pivot from Wise or just rostering him everywhere in single entries, 3 maxes in general. Kuchar not only is the lone golfer on tour scrambling for par or better at a 74% clip this PGA season, but he's also made the cut in 3 of his last 4 events, including 2 T10s. So also terrific recent performance that I want to continue riding here, especially given his terrific play around the greens. Scrambling is going to be very important this weekend, given how low the average GIR rate is at this course. So yeah, I want to be overweight on Kuchar. What about you being overweight in the 9K range?
Yeah, so Kuchar I like. You mentioned the 8th place finish at Genesis last week, gained 5.5 strokes on approach. That was his best approach outing since 2019. So if he can, maintain that level of iron play, it's an awesome fit for him here. I kind of like Min-Woo Lee, who I think might go under owned just because we don't see the guy much. He's a Euro Tour guy primarily, and honestly hasn't had a ton of success on the PGA Tour, although he did make the cut in 3 of the 4 majors last season. But on the Euro Tour, he's been rolling lately. And if you look at the OWGR, I think he's like the 6th best player in this field according to the World Golf Ranking. So, I mean, it's a gamble because we haven't seen him on the PGA Tour often, but I think he's going to go overlooked because of that fact.
Min-Woo Lee also stood out for me. Definitely one of 2 9K guys I'd be willing to put in my pools, or like rostering 2 9K guys if you skip the 5-digit range.
Yep.
Minwoo Lee is very high on my list. Moving on to 8Ks, I think the conversation likely begins with Johnny Vegas, who coming off injury is playing much better recently. As Noonan also noted in his betting piece, Vegas has gained strokes putting at PGA National on, as you mentioned earlier, his favored Bermuda grass, because Bermuda grass is showing like different splits across the board here compared to normal greens. And he's gained strokes on putting in Bermuda grass in 3 of his past 4 starts. So just the fact that given the fact that he's been in the green on approach in second and strokes gained on approach in 7 consecutive starts, I think everything's shaping up for a Vegas outright week potentially. So although he's going to be chalk, I definitely don't mind eating it at 8,600 on DraftKings. What about you in this range?
Yeah, I'll be eating the Vegas chalk too, because unfortunately I missed the good betting numbers. I think he opened at like 45-1. He was kind of quickly bet down to 35 or 30. So I didn't end up betting him outright, but I do like him. As you said, the ball striking, he's been awesome. Putting was the only issue last week. He lost almost 7 strokes putting at Genesis, which, like we said, is POA. These are Bermuda greens. It's his best surface. Vegas has also been good at Honda. He's made the cut in 6 straight appearances here, has a 4th place on the resume, a 6th place on the resume. So everything kind of matches up for Vegas here. I think you could make him $9,200, $9,300 golfer in this field and it'd be fine. So I do think he's a bit underpriced at 8,600.
Anyone else stand out to you in this range? I know Taylor Pendrith is popping in a couple models here. Sepp Straka, of course, last year's winner here. Harris English coming off a terrific performance at the Genesis, a T12. But overall, prior to the Genesis, especially around the green and putting, had been just piss poor. So I couldn't get on it last week. But anyone else popping out to you here in the 8K range?
So Adam Svensson, I think, is one of, if not the best ball strikers in this 8K range. The putting is always an issue with Adam Svensson, but he showed well here last year, 9th place finish, despite losing 4.5 strokes putting, which again is the issue with Svensson. But if he can just be a neutral putter, I think he has a chance to win as an 8K guy. And then kind of a flyer, a guy I'm assuming is going to be super low owned, is Garrick Higo. I just like his upside. He's volatile from week to week, from round to round even, but he won at Palmetto either last year or 2 years ago, which is a similar course, I think, similar part of the country. I think Palmetto's in South Carolina. But again, it's just the upside with Higo. Like, I think if his ceiling is higher than most, if not all, these other guys in the 8Ks.
And oddly enough, Higo at 8K, I think may check in as leverage off of 7,700 Lee Hodges, who I think is going to be one of the more popular golfers, not only in this range, but maybe even top 5, top 10 rostered among the entire field, given his salary and everyone seeing the coming off the fresh T18 at the Genesis. Around Hodges, though, I don't mind playing Hodges, but if he is going to be over rostered, which I'm projecting at least right now on Wednesday, then I have other players I want to check in. Aaron Rai is one of them, one of only 8 golfers participating in this tournament who has landed in at least 70% of fairways over the last month. And as Ron noted in his course preview, which I always suggest everyone go read to get up to date on the course and what matters most, accuracy. Although the water, as we mentioned earlier, is everywhere, accuracy isn't the end-all be-all. You can still get there by distance, given that the rough at this course is not penal at all. At the same time, at least with Rye, like, accuracy as not a long driver, accuracy is important. So I don't mind going on him. And then I'll also be flag planning, overweight, however you want to call it, on Joseph Bramlett, as no golfer in this tournament has recorded a higher GIR than Bramlett over their last 5 events. So at least the approach and play around the green is coming into form at the perfect time. Those are my 2 favorite plays, though, in the 6, 7Ks, though. What about yours?
I like Bramlett. To me, Lee Hodges is a pretty easy fade if he's going to be chalk. He had missed 5 straight cuts prior to last week, and he's a POA guy. He's a positive putter on POA. He's a negative putter on Bermuda. So if he's going to be chalky, I have no issue fading Lee Hodges. I like Ben Griffin, who has just pretty consistently gains both off the tee and on approach. And if you look at, he hasn't won yet on the PGA Tour or the Korn Ferry Tour, but if you look at some of his better finishes, they're on these coastal Bermuda courses like PGA National. So I think it's a good course fit for Ben Griffin. And then I also like Hayden Buckley in this $77,000 range, who popped. Was it at Pebble Beach? He popped pretty recently. He was in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I believe it was Pebble Beach,
or is it Amex?
the wind.
Sorry, it was neither. It was neither. It was
the Waste
Open.
Management.
Sony Open.
Sony Open number 2. Yeah.
Second at the Sony Open. He's gained off the tee in 15, 20 straight events. He's gained on approach in 3 of his last 4. He's a guy who is a pretty good Bermuda putter. So I think Hayden Buckley is worth a shot in this range.
Some other players I think are worth mentioning are Danny Willett, Davis Riley, and then Charlie Hoffman has been performing well of late. If you can get down there at the low 7Ks, if you need that. And then Russell Knox is one of those guys where you have to sacrifice a little bit because he's been so bad putting and around the green. But his accuracy and approach has been amazing over the last 3 months. So if you just want to take a chance on that, and hopefully Bermuda can solve all problems here, cross your fingers. Knox is another guy I've been looking into for large field DFS quite a bit.
Yeah, I've lost so much money on Russell Knox because he does always pop in the models because the ball striking's so good. But the guy's just a horrible putter week in, week out. I do think Eric Van Rooyen is a bit underpriced here, maybe in the low 7s. I just think long term he's a better player than that. Comes in off a 50th at Waste Management, but he didn't putt too well that event. The ball striking was pretty good. Came in 6th at the American Express, 3 starts back. Doesn't have much success at Honda, but again, I just think long-term talent-wise, he's a pretty good value at that price.
I don't mind EVR because we've seen in 2 of his last 3 events now, he's gained strokes on approach and off the tee. And the one time he did not do that was the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, as you mentioned earlier, which the wind took out half the field. Like if you just picked the wrong wave, which you don't even pick, if you were in the wrong wave at tee time, like you were screwed from the beginning there. So I don't mind that at all. I played him a little bit at under 7K last week, just looking for dumpster diving to fit John Rahm in, because that was my flag plant last week, starting at the top. And so, I really don't mind going back to him, since I would argue his recent performance, EVRs, has been pretty good. As we get into the dumpster diving, though, one that stood out to me was Ryan Moore. Stroke gain on approach in 8 consecutive events now, and has recorded above average accuracy off the tee compared to the field in every start over the last calendar year. So amazing consistency shown since literally January 23rd of 2022. Again, putting wise, it's a disaster, but at least he's accurate off the tee and has been good on approach, which seems very important at this course. So I don't mind being overweight on Ryan Moore if looking for values. What about you?
Yeah, at this point of the player pool, I'm just kind of trusting my numbers that I ran for this week, and Satoshi Kodaira kind of pops for me. He's $6,700. Last time we saw him was at Pebble. He came 29th, gained 5.3 strokes on approach. And he's generally a positive approach player, which is kind of all you can ask for at this, part of the player pool. So I think he's worth a shot. He seems like a relatively safe bet if you're trying to get down this low.
Also, 2 other people who are popping for me, if you are looking to get down this low, just strictly on approach, were Chris Stroud and Zach Blair. But again, those are really dumpster diving if you're trying to fit 2 10K guys or just build differently. Those were guys that were strictly popping for me on approach from 150 to 175 yards out. Nothing really else standing out here. Who would you say at the end of this are the 2 guys you are going to be most overweight on whenever you start building lineups?
One is definitely going to be Vegas. And then I think my second is going to be Ben Griffin.
Oh, Griffin's such a good one too in that range because he's leveraged off a lot of guys around him, especially Hodges. I will go, as I mentioned earlier, Bramlett and Kuchar, I think, are going to be my 2 favorite plays, and then I can build from there. Do you have any favorite bets that you've already laid for the Honda Classic?
Yeah, most of the same guys we've talked about. Again, I bet Aaron Wise at 28-1. I bet Ben Griffin at 60-1. I actually got a 110-1 on EVR. And then I also bet Higo at 60-1. I think he has that winning upside that not a lot of these other guys. I mean, how many guys in this tournament have actually won a PGA Tour event? It's got to be like less than 20, and Higo's one of those.
That's why I think Vegas Even though the
Yeah.
markets are shortened, if you can line shop for something around 35, 38, Vegas
Yeah, that's
outright,
fair.
yeah, still good to me. Vegas T20, I think, is the highest floor bet you can make, so I'm on that. And then I did stick in some Kuchar outrights because I think his number is still fairly good. Anything else anyone needs to know when building lineups for, again, this weak field for DFS?
No, just don't be pissed when you wake up Thursday morning at 8 a.m. and your guy's like 6 over par already, because it's just one of those events.
We are luckily as well in Floridian golf, which means that golf starts earlier, which is the best. We don't need to worry about the West Coast late start again.
It's like 6:50 a.m. Eastern.
It's the best. You literally wake up and it starts. It is the
Yep.
absolute best.
Yep.
Jared, tell everyone where else they can find both your golf and football work.
And my golf stuff is, I'll tweet some stuff once in a while at Smola DS. I do a weekly show on Prime Sports Network. That's mostly a betting show if you're into that side of it. And then football wise, ton of stuff on my Twitter at Smola DS, and then draftsharks.com. Like John mentioned at the top here, we are starting to dig into the rookie class. We'll have all those scouting reports, profiles, and their rookie rankings posted before the NFL draft starts.
Ryan Noonan's betting piece already on the site. Ron Kloss's DFS model also on the site. He will have the first round leader article and his favorite bets for that up by Wednesday evening. Of course, Ron will be back as well with Byron next week for Arnold Palmer DFS. But until then, thanks, Jared, for joining us. And we will be back next week. Good luck. And remember, be a little bit kinder than what's required. We'll see you next time.